appreciate you guys being here today. Cool day in a lot of ways. One, it's National Girls and Women in Sports Day, which is awesome. Just had a really cool event, the Stampede for Women. I think I saw you there in a sport coat, Joey, so I appreciate you dressing nice and coming in. But a really cool event, recognize women in sports and their accomplishments. Powerful day in a lot of ways. Good luck to Mindy and the lacrosse team as they start their journey of building a program on Friday night. It's been a long time coming. I feel like we got hired at the same time and have paralleled in a lot of ways, and I see those girls out of my window working every day, which is really cool. Finally off the road. It was such an energetic, exciting day to come in on Monday and actually get to work with our kids for a little bit and just see our guys. I feel like I've been in at 6 a.m., watched some guys train, and been out on the road for what feels like a really long time, even though it's just been about 3 weeks. So, you know, we capped off this period here with 40 additions to the team, which is a lot. And it's kind of this ever-changing world of college football. I feel like this was the first class where we had a full 2 years to start evaluation, start developing relationships, and be able to put it together, where 40 guys is a lot, you know, especially if the rosters get to 105, which is what we're anticipating here in April with the settlement. You're talking about 40, just under 40% of your team. So there's a lot, you know, you look at the class, and without just sitting here throwing a bunch of numbers at you, but 40 guys, 21 from the state of Florida, 8 from the state of Georgia, and that's really where you want to be. You know, that's the great thing about this job, is that you don't have to go very far. You just got to be able to evaluate at an elite level and continue to build relationships. You know, 3 guys from the DMV, we've had ties there. That's I think going to continue to be a consistent deal for us. 3 Midwest kids, which obviously there's a lot of ties for us in the Midwest. And then Australia, that seems to be a growing tie as well. But, you know, you at the end of it, you bring in 13 transfers. And I said when we got here we were going to build a program rather than a team, and I feel like each year we've taken less and less transfers, but the transfers have been more and more targeted. You know, you look at the transfers, 7 of the 13 are Florida kids. Another, 3 are Georgia kids. Again, you see the footprint where we're trying to invest all of our time. And we kind of attacked positions of need there. We don't necessarily want to live in the portal, but we want to be able to continue to fill gaps. And you look at our roster now, we've got 31 seniors, and then we've got this crop of the last 2 recruiting classes of young guys that we're so excited about, that just got to continue to grow. And if it all meshes right by the time we get to August, I'm really excited about the team. I feel like we addressed so many needs, like the specialist room completely overhauled, the running back room. We lose 3 really, really high-impact guys. We take a transfer in Norton, who's played a ton of football, take 2 young kids, and then, you know, we'll see where we are here at the end of spring. But you feel like that's going to be a ton of production to replace, and that's been a huge point of emphasis. Wide out, we feel like we struck gold there in every imaginable way with the young kids and Chaz coming in. You know, a tight end. It's a position we've had to continue to build and grow for our offense to be successful. Bringing in Wyatt Sullivan, who through 3 weeks of being here, we're as excited as anybody on this roster. I think he's in the right system, in the right mold. You know, and then 2 young guys we're really excited about. On the O-line, you look at the 2 transfers we bring in, both Bay Area kids. You got Connor McLaughlin, who's a Jesuit kid who went out to Stanford, got his degree out there, which big deal, whatever. But he wanted to play his last year here, started for 2 years at right tackle for him, wanted to play his last year in front of his family, and beyond excited there. And a young man in Thomas Schrader, who's a Venice kid, one of 5 kids here from Venice now, state champs, elite program right down the road. And he's a young man, started his career at Florida State, had a really, really tough injury, and wanted to start fresh, and went to App State, started every game for them at right tackle, wanted to come home. Coaching change helped there, wanted to come home, and I think it'll pay off dividends for us. That specialist room, we felt like we had to replace a punter who was an All-American, had to replace a kicker, and Nico and John split those reps last year, a field goal kicker. And so we felt like as Nico's role continues to grow and evolve, bring in a guy that can compete at the kicker spot and also kick off for us. And then we said, man, if one Australian got us to an All-American, what would 2 Australians do? And so that's the punter situation there with bringing in 2 guys, and we obviously like what we do schematically, and that fits us. The D-line, man, we felt like we struck gold with the young guys that we brought in, but then for Josh Salazar to come home, and Josh, Polk County kid, who I was lucky enough to be a part of him as a young man down the road. The young man was a captain down there as a sophomore, as a junior, went to Texas A&M, wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and when he was looking for a situation that was right for him and his family, that's a young man that's played a ton of football at a high level and has got an incredible future. And then to go get Jacob Merrifield from FAU, been an on and off starter there for 3 years inside for him, a leader in every imaginable way, tough, hard-nosed kid. And then Dre Butler, who has had quite a journey in college, and we dug deep, and really it's fascinating. He's got a crazy story and a fascinating one, and we didn't know if he would get another year, because he really is run out of eligibility, and the NCAA already granted his 7th year. He spent 2 years in junior college, but has played so much football on the D-line all over the place, and was impactful at Charlotte a year ago. That was a late addition that we felt like we needed. You add the young kids, and then signing Rich Scott today, who was a St. Thomas kid, another state champ. We felt like we did a really good job there. And you look down the list, in the back end, to add Bugsy, who's a South Florida kid, who went to Charleston, then went to McNeese, was an all-conference player at McNeese, was a captain at McNeese. For us to replace in the back end at the safety spot, specifically the boundary safety spot, as those young guys are getting older, Fred Gaskin and the crew getting older, we felt like we needed somebody there with some experience. He's got 4 years of it. And then at corner, feel really good about the young guys we signed. We added Dorian Mallory today, who's a Fort Myers kid that played his senior year down in Miami at LaSalle. High-end track kid, high-end speed, high-end cover ability, and then went and got Jonas DeClona, who was at Wisconsin a year ago, who's a Naples High kid. Again, the theme, these local guys coming back. And so if I could summarize what we did or what we tried to do at the end of the day was go evaluate like crazy, sign a bunch of high school guys that we can continue to build the program with, and then add the portal guys that we felt like could give us immediate help, immediate snaps, but at the same time focus on guys from the area that left and are coming back. And I think the first 2 years, the focus was on get guys in here that can get snaps for us, that can play, that can help us continue to lay a foundation, where this class, the portal was so targeted with local guys, and I think that was our vision 2 years ago when we got here, was that's what we want to do. We're not going to get them all, but we're going to get as many as we can, and if they do leave, when the chance to come home happens, we want to be there to do it. So at the end of the day, 7 guys from the Bay Area, 4 guys that won state titles last year, like all things that are critically important. And every coach is going to stand up here and tell you they won signing day. So I'll tell you, we are well on our way to winning this period. We're super excited, more energized than ever. As we move forward here, we'll get on the field next week with our guys with winter workouts, with OTAs, and we'll have quite a long period here. We push spring ball back a little bit to give us a little bit more time going into spring ball, and we'll start spring ball right after spring break. We'll finish it off with a spring game in some fashion, April 26th out here at Corbett, right on campus, hopefully overlooking a bunch of cranes working just across these practice fields, building this on-campus stadium and building the nicest football complex in the entire country as we play this spring game, hopefully at the end under the lights. Segrist is working on fireworks, snow cones, bounce houses. What's that? Food trucks, yep. And outside of that, we're going to incorporate a little bit of uniqueness into spring ball this year. We'll have a Friday night practice, which we have not done. From a recruiting side to help us a little bit there, we'll have a student appreciation practice, which will be that Friday night, April 11th. We'll add that, and we're going to go to work. And this is going to be 7 months here of the hardest that this program has gone through. This is going to be 7 months of, they're 3 weeks into already, as physically and mentally demanding of an off season as these guys have ever been a part of. We've got to create incredibly hard situations for these guys to go through from a mental and physical side to prepare us for what's coming these first 3 weeks of the season as you look at the schedule. And that'll be a hot topic as we get closer, but it's going to be a gauntlet that we got to be ready for. And it started 3 weeks ago when they got back from the bowl game. A lot of momentum after the bowl game. I guess we haven't really talked since then, but a lot of momentum on the recruiting side, a lot of momentum for us as a team to be able to go finish. We loved it so much in Hawaii, we just kept going, and we went all the way to 5 overtimes because nobody wanted to leave. But it was an incredible trip, a huge credit to our administration for allowing us to do it first class and allow our kids to experience that culture for a week. Man, it was incredible. It was beautiful. We worked really hard, but the guys got to experience it. And underneath all the craziness of college football, the experiences and growth and learning is at the core of all of it. And they certainly had an incredible time out there, capping it off with a win against a really good San Jose State team. And you saw for us, I think, in a lot of ways, we were able to get through the winter period in the portal and not get hit by it in any sort of crazy way. I think used it to our advantage in every imaginable way. I think speaks to our culture, speaks to our players, speaks to our staff. We didn't have a ton of turnover in the staff. We've made some additions and some young coaches that have had opportunities elsewhere. We'll make some announcements here at the end of the month of kind of final additions to the staff. But the ability to bring in Cody Burns was huge for us at the receiver spot. I was with Cody. We were able to hire Cody 4 years ago now, I guess 5 years ago. And Cody was with me at Tennessee for a year, did an incredible job with our wideouts and our pass game, helped me so much in the adjustment to the recruiting of what that required, helped me so much as just in growth in general, left and was with the Saints. That was kind of his dream to go chase coaching in that league. And for him, he had a million opportunities in this job market and chose to come here, chose to help us build as we continue to go where we want to go. So really excited about Cody. Just amazing teacher, amazing man, really, really sharp. And it's amazing, 3 years removed from college football, one, his plethora of knowledge, but two, how much college football's changed. We sat down the day before he went out on the road, and I'm like, man, like, here's just, let me give you what you got to know. It's changed, man. And you think about 3 years, everything has changed, like in the recruiting landscape. So he's like staring at me like, I got to do what? And I'm like, man, like, don't go back to the NFL. Like, this is great. We get to go visit these kids at their homes now. We didn't used to be able to. Now you can call anybody you want. And by the way, we also pay them. All right, so this is it's drastically different, but he's added a ton just in the month he's been with us. And again, going back to our team, just what these 7 months present in front of us, the amount of growth we got to make. And I sat down after the season. I took the 4 days after the bowl game, 5 days after the bowl game, and sat down and evaluated the entire program top to bottom. Was super, super critical of every single area, including myself, super critical of where we got to grow, and made a lot of changes, made some changes amongst the staff, made some changes amongst the support staff, a lot of changes in our process, and here we sit as we've begun this journey of what's coming. This is, I truly believe, where you build a football team right now. Again, the toughness, the grit, the hard that they've got to learn to go through. We got to make crazy growth physically and mentally here over the next 7 months. We got a bunch of guys that have had postseason surgeries that got through the year and have needed them. So we'll have right now, I think, 13 guys out for the spring already, just recovering from postseason stuff, and we'll announce that as we get into spring ball. But I'm excited, energized, juiced up. It's a really, really cool time to be a USF Bull. It's a really cool time in our program, and we got to do everything we can to take the next step. So we will. I'll open it up to questions.
You'd mentioned, from the time that you and your staff got here to get to the point where you're in bowl games and winning bowl games, that is hard. Getting from that point to a championship conference level is harder. Is that what you're referring to? You're coming up with phase 2 coming?
Yeah, I don't know if there's so much phases as much as you just want to continue to grow. I think the standards and the expectations have been laid within our program. When I sat down and really evaluated it, you look at it, getting to the point we've gotten to is hard. Getting to this next point of competing for a conference championship, like it's incrementally harder, but the gap is not huge. And you look at it, and as honest as I've ever been, like you look at what we were as a team a year ago. When we were good, we were really good. Like we played with top 25 programs. When we were bad, we were bad. And you look at the Navy game, you look at the Memphis game, you look at the Tulane game, you look at the Rice game, and you look at the second half of the Miami game, and it's like, man, like where is the breaking point, and why the inconsistency? And that's what I mean by it's not huge. But that gap is monumentally hard to close, and some of it is schematic, and those things we as coaches make a lot of money to have to make sure that we fix. But a lot of that is simply the expectation to win and what actually goes into it, and this word process that you guys are sick of me saying, but continuing to perfect it. And I think we're getting close to a point in our program where we expect to win every week, but the ability to perfect our process and how we go about our business daily is the hardest part. And that gap, I used to talk to Amir weekly on how do we close this gap? How do we, because he truly believed it was all mental. And I truly believe it's a large chunk of it being mental, and the grind of what a season is, and the ability to be consistent through ups and downs, through injuries. And the simple thing and the easy thing is to say, man, we lost our quarterback week 5, and that's why. Like that's a very much a loser's way to handle that. my job is to have another quarterback ready to roll, and he stepped up and did what he had to do and played really well at times. You went through growing pains at times, but at the end of the day, nobody cares. And so my job is to have us lined up to where guy goes down, next guy up, and the depth is part of that. That's what you're trying to build is depth, but that small, whatever that gap is, we've got to find. And I feel like I've got answers, and I feel like we're ready to go do it. We're 3 weeks into it, and I feel like we'll find out when it comes to the season, but I think we've got a really good plan to go attack it. But as it says on our wall, in our staff room, a good plan executed poorly is a bad plan, so we'll find out.
You alluded to depth. We all know the depth issues this program had when you took over. Now, on this day in 2025, do you feel like you possess the depth to compete for a conference title?
I think it's a combination of knowing the league and knowing your players. 2 years in, I feel like I have a better idea. But I think it'd be unfair to say, man, we have the depth. I think when you compare yourselves to others with the way the portal was, like you look at our league and there's I think 2 teams in our league that signed over 30 transfers. And so you're like, man, who are those guys? Like, obviously you looked at them yourself, but you got no idea. I think it'll be a really good question for halfway through the year when you feel like you're established and you know what other people have in terms of where we stack up. I feel like we've got a lot more depth, where we've got a big group of seniors that have played a ton of football. Almost all of them have started games. And then you have this group, you take our first class from when I got here, like that class ended up being really small and ended up being really put together quickly. Some really good players in there, some guys that aren't here. And then you look at the last 2 classes where they were complete classes. We felt like we addressed issues, but those kids are now either sophomores or redshirt freshmen and freshmen. Now you're adding this other class. I think we've got numbers at spots across the board. The only position where you would say, man, we're kind of low on numbers would be linebacker, and we got to continue to find a solution there in terms of through the spring portal window. But I feel like we're much closer than we've ever been. I feel like we're drastically closer than we've ever been to having the depth you need. But I think we'll have a way better idea after spring to see which of these young guys have become old, and I think we'll have a much better idea after the spring portal window. Remember, there's a whole other free agency market here coming up. We decided as a college football enterprise to say you can not only transfer during your season, you can also do it in the spring. So as we continue to go through that period, I think we'll have a much better idea.
On the issue of transfer portal, how does this work? I know there's a database of hundreds and hundreds of players that you have access to. Do players call you? Does an agent call you? How's that work?
Yeah, I think each case is different. I think that's probably the biggest difference here this year than it's ever been. I told our staff, like, this was the first time in 2 years where these are now guys that you recruited. And maybe it was at the last place, but you recruited coming out of high school. So these are guys that for the most part, guys that you've had relationships. Like you look down the list, and virtually every one of these guys we previously had a relationship with. Like both the punters we didn't, but you previously had a relationship with. And so each of those connections is different. Some the young man goes in the portal, it pops up, and you're like, man, I didn't think he was going to go in, but he went in. Some you had the high school coach calling you. Some agents. I think, man, Joe, you're going to have to buy my book at some point. I'm going to wait till I retire, and I'm going to write it. It'll be, nobody will buy it, but I'll give you a copy. I'll sign it. But it's, each one's different, and it is a little bit crazy. I'm not going to get up here on a rant about the transfer portal, but it is a little bit crazy. But each kid is individually different, and that's why I say our focus has been so heavy on Bay Area kids, or at least Florida, Georgia kids, because you feel like, man, at a minimum, we've been in each of these high schools 5 times, at a minimum. So the relationships with the high school coaches, some were already pre-established, some have been established since we've been here, but at least at a minimum, the high school coach can tell you what the heck is going on, at a minimum. Some, Chaz Nimrod, I recruited out of high school. Cody Burns recruited out of high school. So, and I coached Chaz for a year, so that one is different, right? Like each one of them is a little bit different. Cortavius Norton, Joel Gordon coached at Iowa State. Gio, our strength coach, coached at Iowa State. So there's a handful of those, and then you look at a Thomas Schrader. Thomas played at Venice. We got 5 Venice kids on the team. There's an elite relationship there with that program going back to, I signed a kid there in 2009. Same head coach, same program. So elite relationship. Thomas played with Zane Herring at Florida State. He was on the same official visit at Florida State with Connor McLaughlin and Zane Herring. They all went through the recruiting process together. Like, so each kid is individual, but I could go down the list of each one of these guys and give you a story of how we came upon them. And then there's a kid like Adam Davidson, college kicker, who goes in the portal. We're like, man, we need a guy that could come in and at a minimum kick off for us, but can help us in the field goal game and be an emergency punter for us. Well, there's this kid at Davidson, FCS non-scholarship, that's just went in the portal, 3-year starter. Statistics don't lie. Let's go see this kid, meet him. Let's see what he's about. Does he fit us? Like, I didn't know who he was before he went in the portal. So each one's a little bit different.
Coach, when you talk about recruiting Georgia and Florida, how important is it to get into the inroads of those powerhouses like Venice and Aquinas, who are producing Division I players in the double digits every year?
Yeah, I think more importantly than the powerhouses, you want to be in the programs that win football games. You want to recruit, as you look at a profile of who we're trying to get, whether it's a high school kid or a portal kid, you, in this era right now, right, the character, the ability to work through hard, the ability to face adversity almost outweighs physical characteristics in some ways, right? Because we feel like if we get a young man here, we can develop them with the resources we have, the people we have, we can develop them better than anybody in the country. So, but whether the young man comes in and starts as a freshman or the young man's going to sit here for 2 years and grow and develop, right now, more than any other time in college football, the easiest thing to do is, man, I don't like my situation, I'm out. So the ability to take young men from a character standpoint that have been through hard, that know how to win, that understand what it is to build and sustain success, finding that is almost more important than a young man that has the physical traits. And generally where you're going to find those guys is at elite high school programs that win, because generally those programs have elite high school coaches that win and have the same standards and demands that you're looking for. And so whether it's a program that produces 10 Division I kids a year, 15 Division I kids a year, like St. Thomas, like Venice, like Lakeland, Edgewater, they're everywhere, right? Grayson, there's so many of them. Or it's a program that, like Union County, where Gavin Jenkins went, that's got an elite football coach. They don't produce 15 Division I kids a year. They produce maybe 2, but those kids grew up in that community. That's where they went to middle school. That's where they went to high school. They're coached incredibly hard. They run high-level schemes. They get coached football. They lift. They run in the offseason. They run track. They play basketball. So maybe they're not producing 15 kids a year, but they are producing 11, 12 wins a year, and those guys know how to win, know how to work, know how to stick through hard and not transfer. That's what you're looking for. And so hopefully that answers your question. Elite high school coaches, elite programs, whether they're producing a bunch or not. Now, the teams that are producing a bunch, you obviously have to have incredible inroads there, because if they're producing a bunch of them, you'd like some of them.
Coach, the Newberry's coach, when he got the job, was asked about what Caleb Williams should expect, and he said he better get comfortable with being uncomfortable. How important is it to make your guys uncomfortable at practice so they're ready for a game?
Yeah, very important to create that environment. It starts right now. I mean, it starts in the weight room. It starts in the winter workouts. What these winter workouts, even how we've evolved in our winter workouts. You know, our first year was spent primarily trying to get these guys to not be hurt. Like the physical demand of what we were about to go into in year one was drastically different than the guys that were here were used to, and then we brought transfers in. It was, for lack of a better term, a shit show that you were trying to just stabilize. You know, so we were literally just trying to teach elementary movements where guys wouldn't get hurt. Last year, we spent the entire winter workouts on leadership, battlefield communication, just communicating on the field and trying to develop guys that can lead. Because again, you hadn't won. You had a little glimpse of it in year one, and you're trying to manage these emotions of, man, I was the guy on a 7-win team. You're like, you were the guy on the 7-win team, yep. Here's how you lead, here's how you communicate, here's the expectation of where we're going. So we spent the entire winter teaching how to communicate when things are chaotic, teaching guys how to lead, teaching guys how to follow. Where I feel like now, year 3, we're gonna go in winter workouts, it'll feel like old school, not maybe old school for you, but old school for me. There's a lot of things outlawed old school for you, but it'll be as tough and as gritty. Like I said, we're already 3 weeks in, where we're going to make it as hard as you can possibly make it through these winter workouts into spring ball. You want to make it hard. We're also more physically prepared for it 2 years in.
You mentioned that again as far as it's going to be more demanding, but you also said that you took some stock after the season to evaluate how you're doing things. Are those connected? Like you decided, okay, we need to do it harder, or was that always part of the plan?
Yeah, I think the program itself, since we got here, has been hard. What the expectation, the standards of how you build your process daily is hard. What we do physically in terms of what we do offensively is really hard. It's demanding in terms of physically and mentally. You practice against the defense, how TO implements it, and then you're going against that offense. It's hard. It's demanding. We've invested greatly in special teams, greatly, and it showed up. You know, nobody talks about it because nobody cares, but one of the best special teams units in the entire country. And up until the last 2 weeks on kickoff, we were, I think, in the top 5 in the entire country in special teams. We invest greatly in it. So it's hard. Practice is generally hard anyways with what we do. I think we've also been really highly guarded because of a crazy lack of depth of, man, I don't want to get anybody hurt here either. Like, you're trying to manage it constantly, where I still don't want to get anybody hurt, but we're more physically prepared to do what we want to do in terms of 2 years into the weight room now, 2 years into a nutrition program that's real, 2 years into these guys actually learning the benefit of sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night, the benefits of putting things into my body that are really good for me. So we're more prepared physically to be able to now go do the mental hard than we've ever been.
Alex, is there anything that you may have learned from last year's cycle, going through the portal and all that, that really helped you this time around? And I asked that question respecting that, again, an awful lot has changed in 12 months with the collegiate landscape and so forth.
Yeah, I feel like I learned that although a guy in the portal can come from anywhere in the country, the more you know, the less chance you have to miss. And I think the only way to have more knowledge is to either A, somebody on the staff had a previous relationship, maybe coached the kid or recruited the kid, but B, keep it more local. keep it from the programs that you know where they're coming from, at least where they were on the high school side of it. I think mitigating risk, we've been really highly calculated in the portal because every young man we've taken in the portal, we've tried to gauge, is he going to give us more value than a high school kid? Because I don't want to miss out on a really good high school football player. Because if we can get a really good high school football player for 4 years, I'd rather do that than get a kid for a year. There's been some situations where we're like, man, we need a 1-year guy. That's just what we need. Teron Keith's a great example last year. Like Kelly Joyner was coming off an injury. Naquan Wright was a senior. And then you had these young guys. You're like, man, we are a running back short of what we need. We are a kick returner short of what we need. That one was really targeted. We said, man, give me a guy that's in the portal, that's from Florida, that has played a ton of football, that can do some unique things out of the backfield, but can return kicks. He fit that mold. We went after him. We got him. So I think more targeted than anything else. But I think portal recruiting, just like high school recruiting, is so much about mitigating risk. It's how little of a risk can you take? Because just as much as the player, the locker room is so critically important. And can you take a guy that is going to come in and add value both on the field and in the locker room without ever tearing it up? Because you spend every day trying to make sure that the locker room is right and the culture is being built the right way. It takes one guy to go blow it up. And so I think I've probably been more guarded of that than ever. I think our first 2 years, if I'm totally honest, you sit and you look at a depth chart and you look at the guys and you're like, gosh darn it, I need a something. Like, I think when you get desperate people do desperate things, you kind of maybe miss more than you should. You put different goggles on, you're like, well, yeah, like, I guess that kid can kind of run, and man, character, you get desperate. I feel like right now I'm more confident in what we're doing and how we're doing it than I've ever been, in the sense of like, man, if there's one question on that guy, I'm good. Move on. Take the next one.
Anything else for Coach?
Awesome. Thank you guys for being here.
Very much.